Give them credit, they held back on that joke for 7 whole episodes. That takes a lot of patience. Continuing right from where we left off last week, Chikurin was going to reveal where Hisui was, which turned out to be the very last place our heroines would ever think to look. Yeah, just ignore the fact that y'all pretty much saw Hisui become Kota with even the same clothes and everything. Like, I do agree that they are different characters at this point, but compared to everything else in the show, would it really be that surprising that this godchild would be able to contain her own creation, who by all appearances did kind of look like she retracted into Kotoha? Anyway, he also gave all 3 of them new brooms from Gustav, and I did like this little touch of Liko still thinking about his approaching retirement. It won't actually play into this episode, but it's a good way of keeping that subplot somewhat relevant. With his job done, Chikurin wasn't immediately going to head back to the magic world, and instead want to take a vacation in the no magic world. Maybe he could go visit Italy or something. However, since his little wings probably couldn't travel that far, he instead sailed for the Maho girl's place, who at least had some pasta, or rather instant ramen noodles. Yeah, I guess they still hadn't worked out their gas lines, and therefore could only use a microwave. That said, I do appreciate that they were smart enough not to microwave the cup, and instead just the water, as that would just make the ramen soggy. I'm not sure why they don't at least have a hot water boiler yet, but whatever, it was a wholesome scene, and as we even got another boomer Liko moment, with her talking about the economics of going to a family restaurant instead. About my only problem with this scene is the fact that they're eating cup noodles. I mean, come on, y'all could at least do better than the McDonald's of instant ramen. I will also legitimately complain that we didn't get to see them in the bath together, and no, I'm not asking for fan service, but at least just a little bit where we could see the top of their heads enjoying the bath together. That would have been cute. It also would have helped to ease the tension a little more, as the Maho girls went right back to processing their current dilemmas, like the idea that Hisui was in Kota, and that Kronos was still spiriting a bunch of people away. Realizing that her waifu was stressing out a little too much over this, Liko suggests that Mirai use her day off from college the next day to be Chikurin's tour guide. Like, why is everyone saying that this IA thing is gonna take over the world? Seriously, this thing is disturbingly smart. Mirai then got a message from her college friend Rena asking about their other friend Sarah, who, yeah, I think they needed to show this image of because I also kind of forgot that these two had names. Along the way, Mirai got 2 magically induced flashbacks, which is starting to make me think that their vision stuff isn't being controlled by Kronos, otherwise it would show a relatively benign but still happy memory from the final episode of the OG series. But yeah, after showing some actual clips from said episode, we then got a new scene that might have happened after the final quote-unquote battle with Dokorokushi, and the very first final episode cameo of the next lead of this franchise, that looking back on it, yeah, even Cure Whip did it better back in the day. And we also got a new scene from the first episode of this season, right after the little fire rescue scene. Both were meant to highlight how Kotoha had been doing a lot of demanding goddess work during the intervening times of the Precure activities that will become more important in this episode later. At the same time, Liko was having some non-magically induced flashbacks, which honestly I kinda prefer at this point, as not only has this effect become repetitive, but it also shows how Liko is actively thinking about how stuff from their past could help in their current situation. In this case, how they could avoid eating any more disgusting cup noodles by doing a hot pot dinner that they had actually discussed a long time ago, which of course would have a payoff by the end of this. We also got some insight into the steps she actually took to reconnect, or rather relink the worlds through the stones. Interesting stuff that, again, I appreciate aren't magically induced flashbacks, as they do highlight how, while Liko might still think about the past a little too much at times, she is also using it to help shape their present. Back with Mirai, Sarah was nowhere to be found, so of course she and Rena assumed the worst. No, of course she meant knives. I mean, what, do you think that name is just for show? Since there had been no new reports of statues created by Kronos, they cleverly figured out that Sarah might be at some place that no one was at that day, like a college that had no classes. And sure enough, they found quite the modern art piece there. Kronos appeared, and notably, Chikurin didn't recognize him, suggesting that he and Desmos didn't interact at least during his tenure with the final boss of the OG. With that though, Liko and Kota then crash landed in. Hey, pointing out the overused tropes is my job. This week, we very thankfully got the full version of the Sapphire transformation, and it did not disappoint. Apparently, since episode 6, we were able to confirm that this was done by Yuji Takagi, who, while having not worked on Precure up until this point, does have a decent portfolio like this scene from Symphogear G, and by all means, he did this transformation justice by pretty much just doing a slightly smoother and more HD version of the already perfect original. So, yeah, no complaints. He probably did one of the best remasters of the series so far, which is going to be balanced out nicely with what's coming up. Anyway, they had an okay fight with Evil Watch, where it was revealed that said instrument of time was both a source of happiness and sorrow, as it was a gift from Sara's ex-boyfriend. Yeah, thankfully, they didn't say much more than that, as we can just fill in the blanks and don't need all the melodrama. The more interesting victim of the week ended up briefly being Kotaha, as Kronos dug into her desire to go back to the days when she wasn't a goddess, who mostly had to watch over her friends from above. It was very much an ultimate Madoka or Kamen Rider Gaim situation, where they had achieved godhood, and therefore could remain with their friends and loved ones. Granted, it was a little more like the latter, as at least they could come back for the occasional vacation or big movie crossover, but still, it was a very lonely fate.
And unless the devil intervenes, yeah, you're not escaping from that fate. Also, yes, you better believe I am not disturbing this perfect display.
Actually, would I kind of qualify as that? Well, anyway, Kronos managed to prey on that weakness, but he also stumbled upon the memory of when Hisui and Kota met a few episodes back, and made her realize that she did indeed have her daughter's powers within her. Yeah, again, the family tree of this show is kind of messy when you really think about it. Still, with it, she managed to break free and also transform, and this remaster of Cure Felice's transformation was okay. I mean, it was mostly the same, other than removing this transition that showed all of Kota's past and present forms, which, unlike her mother's, feels like a needless omission, as she still needed to age up into her Precure form. Still, I guess it was fine, as I couldn't spot any differences other than that. And of course, it was just nice to see Cure Felice again, though Kronos also noted that she had somehow communicated with Hisui as though that were something that she shouldn't be able to do. Well, anyway, just as soon as she showed up, Kota made quick work of probably one of the most appropriate monsters of the week for a guy named Kronos. And we got to see her Emerald Reincarnation finisher, which probably needed another reincarnation, because this was just a straight up downgrade from the original, as not only did they omit this cool angle of her charging it up, but there's also just an absolute lack of detail throughout that makes this new one just look outright cheap, not just in comparison to the original, but in general. At times like this, I think they would have just have been better off using the original stock animation. Anyway, the episode at least ended nicely, with Liko following up on that hot pot that they had promised long ago, which also turned out to be one of her main motivations for relinking the worlds. This was a nice episode, with an effective reintroduction for Cure Felice, for the most part. I mean, story-wise, it was all solid stuff, and I especially like the stuff with Liko and her pot of hots. I just wish, of course, that they'd given her a little better animation, but really, if that's my only complaint here, then it's no big deal, really. While reawakening Kota's powers and connecting them with Hisui was a big event, this episode was actually a bit more of a cooldown, at least compared to previous and possibly next week's episodes. Which, honestly, is fine in my books, as it did lead to some wholesome family bonding moments with their first daughter after weeks of the second/granddaughter. The idea that one of Liko's primary motivators for reuniting with Mirai was a hot pot was undeniably cute and really wholesome. However, I think the standout moment for me was the confirmation that Kota was indeed lonely with her usual goddess status. While she did get her moments of respite, she would inevitably have to leave her friends behind, and eventually will likely far outlive them. I really want to see how this plays out for her, as it is the kind of story I like to see explored with characters who are essentially cursed with godhood. It's good stuff that overall made for a bit more of an easier going, but still very effective transitional episode before Kronos likely enacts his final plans. Hot pots can certainly bring families together, but they can't keep them together forever. Thank you for watching, and if you want to share in the hot pot that is this channel, maybe check out some of our other videos. Legitimately, we are looking to diversify what we cover on this channel, and hopefully it'll be to y'all's taste. Look forward to I'll Precure tomorrow, and until then though, farewell for now my friends, and hey! I see you putting that ramen in the microwave. Don't you dare!